County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world.
Mr. Clerk. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, since the hour is 5 o'clock, we'll begin with deputations, and I believe the first one is Mr. John Harris. And a reminder to all deputations that there is a strict 10-minute time limit, and the Chair Wells will remind you at 1 minute left. And Mr. Harris, if you'd come up to the podium and address the committee.
All right, are we good? All right, thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you tonight. Over the years, there have been a number of issues that seem to have been left unresolved for members of the community. There has been some focus on some of the issues when controversy seems to arise. We've had issues like builders who have waited long waits to get their projects approved to move ahead. We've seen businesses that want to expand, but their opportunities have been stymied by inefficient bureaucracy and undetermined requirements by the county. We have seen people who want to bring forward initiatives like festivals, that want to bring forth other events that face overwhelming opposition, it seems, and yet there doesn't seem to be a path forward for these individuals. Frankly, when we listen to some of the things that come from council, they can be embarrassing. We've heard one member of council who has said that if staff wants to have their opinion said, then they need to resign and run against them on a ballot. We've seen another councillor who has said that if you live in poverty, it's because you weren't raised well or that you're lazy. We have seen you fight, we've seen you squabble, we've seen you focus on ward politics. It's good for what is good for your ward, while you have said things about the public and about staff that are embarrassing. And you also have said things that say, what are we doing to move forward with the county? Well, we don't want to focus on those things because, quite frankly, they're a waste of time. Well, thankfully, we have members of the press here who cover you every single week. And they have kept a list of the things that you have done in this term. So recently, council has talked about whether we should be able to raise chickens in our own backyards. When staff asked to have a code of ethics reviewed and brought forward, you said no because you didn't want it to stymie the things that you wanted to say. When we talked about holding tank fees, one councillor said, well, if you don't like a possible raise in the holding tank fees, you can move. The list goes on and on. For Dover, to stave off the economic decay that's happening in the downtown of Simcoe, the answer for Dover is simply a parking lot. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the issues that the people in this county are facing in these communities are not often talked about here in this chamber. We're looking for economic opportunities, for job possibilities for our children, so that when they go away to university and to college, when they come back, there are jobs here for them, so they can live in these communities. We want to see our businesses grow and to thrive and to bring forth the new opportunities we want. And we want a county and staff administration that looks after bringing those things forward, not simply being the gatekeepers of the hurdles and endless red tape. Recently, I tried to get a permit. I went down to the Robinson offices, went up to the kiosk, delivered my papers to the kiosk. And I said to the young woman there, I'd like to get a permit. She looked at my papers and she said, oh, this won't do, Mr. Harris, this won't do. And I said, I tried to figure out what the requirements were. I went to the website and I looked. So what do I do? And she said to me, this is what she said, well, Mr. Harris, you need to go to the Tilsonburg website, because their website's a lot better than ours, and you need to look up the requirements, what they have, and bring those back here, and then we'll probably take it. This, as you can imagine, is enormously frustrating. It seems clear. I'll tell you one more story quickly. I went to the Police Services Board. At the Police Services Board, we were dealing with the issue of rising crime in the downtown. We asked them to engage in community policing. We asked them to get to know us. They asked them to partner with us. They answered with a situation table, looking at the core issues, partnering with community partners to address actual issues. They appointed a liaison officer to work with the public. They embedded mental health leads in with officers so that when they went into the field, they dealt with the policing issue and then they dealt with the actual issue, which is mental health. They got to the core issues. It's becoming increasingly clear, and I could have filled up this gallery tonight, but I decided not to, because often I find that you respond well to a full crowd. But it's becoming increasingly clear. The answers to the problems we face don't lie in this chamber at this moment. So through you, Chair, I'm asking the members of these communities to consider running in this next election. If there are leaders here in these communities that have a vision for Norfolk, we need you to step up now. If these community members know someone that would make an excellent counselor, then they need to take them out to lunch, take them out to dinner, and they need to tell them why they would make an excellent counselor. It's often been said that when we come here, we have to ask something. We have to bring something to ask. So this is what I ask. We, the members of these communities, we need you to wake up from your slumber. We need you to do something that actually matters. You run this county like it's a man on a bicycle. You've gotten tired of pedaling. The only way to maintain momentum is when you're coasting, and that is going down a hill. The question you need to ask yourselves is, what happens when we run out of hill? What's left for the rest of us to pick up and move forward with after you vacate these seats? Are we better off from your time in this office? Because candidly, chicken coops and parking lots, they don't cut it anymore. We need sensible answers that move us forward. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Well, I got to get out of the shock first. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Geisens.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Geisens, second by Councillor Height, that we receive the deputation as information. All in favor? Thank you. That brings us to our next speaker, and that would be Bob Harris. Please, Bob. And you know you have 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, I'm Bob Harris, and along with wife Sheila have owned Lot 2 Gowrie Street since 1999. I wish to support this planning application as I'm pro-development, and I'm looking forward to the day when the Gowrie Street lots are finally built on with beautiful homes, and I'm sure they will be. And we'll have a nice little village down there. The only concern I have is that due to a very small building envelope and 1 meter front yard setback, that the reconstructed roadway I'd like to have jog to the northern portion of the road allowance, and shown in my attachment. I believe it's on your monitors, entitled Proposed Reconstructed Road. So just a slight jog so that I'd have a bit of a driveway to go up to the roadway. This will allow me a reasonable driveway length, and there is no impact on the properties of the 2 current residents. Regarding the issue of the status of Cumberland Gowrie Streets, and I've been through this since 1999, my opinion is that they should remain unopened and privately maintained. Most other property owners I talk to have the same opinion, one commenting the road is okay the way it is. To conclude, in the next few years, it's expected that lots 1, 2, and 10 will be built on, resulting in new neighbors with more funds available to privately maintain the roads. That last point I wanted to make is that with more people buying into the Gowrie and Cumberland, there'll be more funds available to maintain the road than there is currently. And in the future, I see the road being nicely maintained. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there questions of Mr. Harris? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bob, for your presentation. Looking at your air photo with the schematics marked on it, your lot is number 2, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
And Mr. Murphy's is number 1? To the west of you, as I recall, is that?
Mr. DePorter's is number 1.
Oh, you purchased from Mr. Gotcha. Now I'm with you. So is it proposed that the road improvement will end where it shows on your schematic, or will it actually go and create frontage on lot number 1, which obviously you would need in order to be able to do the construction on lot number 1?
Well, I understand Mr. DePorter's in the process of purchasing lot 10.
Okay.
And also, I understood was in purchasing the road allowance. Okay.
I understand.
And the idea of it jogging to the north is to give lot 2 a decent driveway length, but the end of it will service lot 10 and lot 1, all of which Mr. DePorter owns.
I now understand. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mayor Luke.
Move to receive as information.
Seconded by Councillor Oliver. All in favor? Motion is carried. Mr. DePorter, you were on, please. You have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council and county staff. My name is Brad DePorter, and I recently purchased Lot 1 on Gowrie Street from Paul Murphy. I've also actually purchased Lot 10, so just for the record. This is why I've requested to do road improvements on Gowrie Street. So what you're going to hear is a thing from the roads department about Gowrie Street and doing improvements to the road. I'm not new to the issue surrounding Gowrie Street and Cumberland Streets. I've been involved with the area for about 3 years. My original offer was to purchase was back in July 1st of 2014, so kind of went through the last 3 years or so of things. After the meeting on May 9th, I felt the road would be left unopened and maintained by the homeowners. This was based on the discussions that occurred and the approval of the zoning and bylaw applications that you guys went through. During the meeting, the councillors both asked both of the owners if they'd be happy with the road, and both of them answered yes. And in fact, I'm fine with leaving the road as maintained by the homeowners too. I will eventually live on Gowrie Street and need to improve the road conditions to provide adequate access to the property. The last 200 feet, as you can see from the diagram up there, is not really acceptable in the current conditions. I mean, it's a little bit of gravel and mainly grass. I'm prepared to do the road improvements that I've outlined to Public Works at my expense, and based on the May 9th meeting, I don't expect to have to bring the road up to municipal standards. In support of Bob Harris's request, I don't have an issue with moving the road to the north as long as I have proper access to the properties and there's proper space for utilities and other things that are needed. In closing, I'd like to say if council feels that the road should be opened, I would expect the county to address Cumberland Street. Now, this road was created by the county and is listed on the county street index as the actual road in the county, although it is not maintained or not open. So again, I honestly feel that really that's not the homeowner's problems on Gowrie Street. I believe that's a county problem for Gowrie Street, and Cumberland Street in particular. So we are prepared though to deal with Gowrie Street and make it good. That's all.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. DePorter, for your presentation. I guess it's covered in the staff report, but I just want you to give us a very, very quick overview of what you would like to do to bring the road up to a standard that you find acceptable. Is it just going to be some gravel, or? Yeah,
I think we would make it wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass down that stretch of the road. We were looking at least doing it gravel. Minimum gravel was the starting point. We would contemplate hard surfacing. We'll look at the cost of that and decide ultimately if we can really do that. But I would prefer to try and do something to that level if we can. So, but as I say, it'll be a minimum of a gravel conditions, and it will be better, I think, than the road is today when it's completed. So, all right.
Any further questions? Councillor Columbus, please.
Yes, Mr. Porter, would there be two buildings, one on Lot 1 and one on Lot 10, or?
That is currently our plan, yes. We would build something on Lot 10 first, and we would live on it, and eventually we would build something on Lot 1 on the lakefront. We're going through, like I said, purchasing the one piece of property, if we can, from the county, the road allowance, to expand that building footprint, and if that's all successful, then we would look at how we would build something eventually there. So.
Thank you.
Mayor Luke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to Brad, the owner resident on Lot 8 and 9 in the home, has there been any comment or any dialogue with them concerning the reconfiguration?
The owner, Kim, is actually here.
Oh,
so
Kim's here.
Yeah, Kim is here. If you'd like to ask her directly, that would be great. Yeah.
Would you like her to come up?
Yes, I would.
Please.
She's smiling, so I think I know what her response will be, but it does affect probably the front of her property as much as anybody.
We have been in collaboration with Bob and Brad, and we seem to have a plan. We get along well. We can maintain the road. We have other issues that are going to be coming up because there is a drainage that goes underneath the property as well. I have my own issues because if you can see my house on lot 8 and 9, it encroaches onto the road allowance, and that was approved like my house was approved, like the building was approved, and it's been like that for 30 years. So that little green, a little north of the proposed, what we proposed to do for our laneway, our shared laneway kind of, I don't want that taken away because it's actually my front lawn, which we didn't realize at the time when we built over 30 years ago that we had done that. So because we had actually owned 6, 7, 8, no, everything but 3. So, and now I'm the owner of 8, 9, and 3. Oh,
Thank you,
7,
Mr.
8, 9, and 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sounds like the neighbors have got it all worked out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions of either? Seeing none, you may be seated. Thank you very much. Council? Councillor Columbus.
Move receipt of the deputation.
Seconded by Councillor Sonnenberg. All in favor? Motion is carried. I think that brings us to staff report, and that would be you, Ms. Robinson. You are now on, please.
Through the chairman to council. Before you is the Gowrie Street road improvement request. Staff have brought this forward at the request of one of the deputations that was here this evening. You will note that staff did not provide a recommendation with respect to this. There are 3 options that are all feasible. There is no preferred technical solution. Option 1 is to not permit anything to be done with the existing condition. Option 2 is to allow the delegation to make the requested improvements to Gowrie Street and to Cumberland per his request. Since the improvements would be made to the road allowance that is not set to municipal standards, we would maintain that the road should continue to be unmaintained by the municipality as well as an unopened road allowance. And the third is to create the property as a proper municipal road to municipal standards, although granted to rural municipal standards, still to municipal standards. We further to note, Gowrie Street itself as a right-of-way is actually a proper 20-meter right-of-way. It is an acceptable standard. Cumberland, which is the street that comes down to Gowrie, is significantly undersized and would pose some significant difficulties in the sense of bringing it up to a municipal standard, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton, please.
So I'm clear through you, Mr. Chairman, to Lee. Lee, if we do absolutely nothing here, the status quo, I don't care what the people do, but we would do not maintain the roads, period. Either the one coming in or what's the name of it? The Erie? Is it Erie Street? Or, sorry, Gowrie. Sorry, Gowrie. It says Erie on here, but no. Anyways, so you gave 3 options. If we say we don't want to be involved with any of those options and leave your report as information, we could do that?
Through the chairman to council, you could certainly do that. Should you do that and any work is undertaken by anyone on those unopened, unmaintained right-of-ways, we would have to ask them to remove their stuff, their work, etc., because that will cause a problem with them doing work on our right-of-way without the proper things in place. If council does wish to allow them to do work and still continue it to be an unmaintained, unopened, i.e. the residents could do work on the right-of-way at their expense, and the county would not maintain it going forward, but the residents would certainly be able to maintain it. We would strongly recommend that there be a resolution from council to allow that, or staff through the existing policies will have to enforce unauthorized work taking place on our right-of-ways, and that would put the residents in not in the best situation.
But it's no maintenance takes place at the present time, correct?
Through the chairman to council, correct. And with what the residents have brought forward as through this proposal, they would do some improvements to it and they would continue, the residents are asking to have it continue to be an unmaintained, unopened right-of-way where they are going to undertake some work on it and they will do the maintenance themselves on that section of road. But it will continue to not be maintained by the county.
Thank you.
Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Public Works, what's the road allowance width on Cumberland?
It's approximately 9 meters, give or take, as opposed to the 20 it should be. Sorry, it's 9 meters, give or take. It weasels in and out a little bit, as opposed to the 20 it should be.
Okay, and Gowrie Street is currently 20 in this image that we have right now?
Yes, it is.
So is there a problem with us selling off some of that to the abutting landowners, considering everybody's encroaching on that anyway?
Through the chairman to council, I don't believe we actually have any building encroachments into the right-of-way. It's close. I mean, it's hard to, when you're looking at some of these maps, exactly where the lines are drawn. It's very, very close to the right-of-way, but they are not in the right-of-way. I would strongly recommend not selling off pieces of the right-of-way. We should maintain a 20-meter right-of-way. That being said, there is no reason, as it currently exists on lots, I believe it's shown on your screen in front of you as lots 8 and 9. They maintain the large bulk grassed area in the right-of-way, and that would continue if council allows just simple improvements to that.
Okay, now, what's the purpose of not reducing the right-of-way again? What advantages do we have, considering their laneways are on there, and by the looks of this image, even a pool, or whatever that round thing is?
I believe the round thing's a trampoline. With respect to the advantages of that, I believe that Ms. Murphy indicated that there's some drainage issues, et cetera. We need to own the property to deal with all of that sort of stuff. The right-of-way allows us to place municipal infrastructure that's required for drainage. They also need an appropriate amount of right-of-way so that any of the utility servicings that takes place is in municipal right-of-way, because there's already a process in place for that to occur. By the county continuing to own that right-of-way, we're able to provide those services to the residents.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Lee, for the report. And I appreciate the fact that Ms. Robinson and her staff have come up with this. I know this has been contentious, and they got direction from council back in the winter, spring to allow Mr. Murphy, now that he had his building envelope, to go ahead, and I'm really happy to see that the property's been purchased and we're going to have a house there. So I personally am going to support a motion that would have option number 2, and that would be to allow him to do his improvements and to maintain those improvements as part of an unopened, unmaintained road. My only question to Lee on that point, though, Mr. Chairman, is, Lee, even though we will be allowing him as a private property owner and perhaps the neighbors collaboratively to do some work on our road allowance, do you reserve, in a sense, the right to be informed of what that's going to be ahead of time?
Through the chairman to council, in order for this work to be undertaken by them, if the option 2 was provided by council, they'd be required to obtain a road occupancy permit for the time that they were doing that. It's like a road excavation permit, so any work that they do in the right-of-way, they have to go through the permitting process. There's a minimal fee, I believe it's $175 to obtain that permit to do that work, and that would be the agreement that would allow that to take place. So we would have control to make sure that they're not putting down something of detrimental nature to the municipality.
Let's say you wanted to pave it in gold. We might not permit that, but
for example, if what they were proposing to do involved a 5-meter deep ditch,
yeah,
that's not something that we would want to take place in our right-of-way. I know it's not part of their proposal, but that's an example of something that we would prohibit in our right-of-way, but there certainly is. There's a permitting process. We've gone over the proposal in fair detail, and we have no objections to what they're proposing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Lee. And with this permitting process, do the applicants, are they required to have an insurance policy of some sort to absolve Norfolk County of any liability?
Through the chairman to council, someone is required to have that insurance policy. Some property owners hire a contractor, and the contractor already has the insurance posted with the municipality. Some people choose to do it themselves and post the insurance policy. So the work is required to have the insurance policy. I don't want to pinpoint who has to carry that insurance policy.
Thank you. All right, council, what do we wish to do here? Councillor Oliver, please.
Mr. Chair, I'll move a motion as follows, and that is that staff report PW 17-61 Gowrie Street Road Improvement Request be received as information, and that council approve option 2 in that report, which is to allow Mr. Brad DePorter to make improvements et cetera, as per option 2, the first sentence as per his request, and that he be allowed to maintain those improvements in the future. So be allowed to undertake the improvements as per his request, and that he be allowed or required to maintain those improvements going forward.
Mayor Luke?
Mr. Chair, I will second that and just comment it's really nice to see something move forward where the neighbors are in agreement and willing to work together rather than the other way. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Councillor Black.
And the motion is a little bit different than the option 2, and through you to Lee, what the motion does not include, but your option 2 does, is, let's see, since the improvements to the road allowance would not be of municipal standards, the recommendation from staff under this option would be to leave it both as an unmaintained road. So that's not included in this motion. And does that make any difference to you in the roads department?
Through the chairman to council, in theory, it does not make any difference because council would have to declare the road open. There would have to be a bylaw passed in order for it to become an open and maintained. However, if there would be no objections, it would be beneficial just from a tracking purpose to have that additional line added into the resolution.
Would you add that in? And as a seconder, you're all right with that? So that has been included.
Thank you.
So the basic motion is exactly as it is here in option 2. Am I correct, Councillor? Yeah.
Of Mr. DePorter having some responsibility for maintaining his improvements in the future.
Yes.
I think Ms. Robinson referenced that.
So it's the motion that is here with the add-on that Mr. DePorter will be responsible for future maintenance. All right, you've heard the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. Go forth and build your road. All right. That brings us to the end of that. We don't have anything more? There's no other deputations?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There's no further deputations. We can either proceed to staff reports or we can circle back and do communications.
Let's go with communications and get it done. Let's go back to communications, and we'll start all back over. And we will start with the first communication, please. You all have it. Mayor Luke.
Thank you very much. And of course, excuse me, as everyone is aware, these were deferred from 2 weeks ago because we ran out of time, excuse me, at our council meeting at the end of August. Mr. Chair, this is a request. It's self-explanatory. The recommendation is there. I have been up and looked at this situation, and as a result of that meeting with Mr. Leffler, I instructed him to send his request forward. This is the southwest corner of the 14th and Norfolk Street North, right at the intersection of the light at the florist shop. So I would move the recommendation because I believe that staff want to have a close look at this request. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
I would second that, and I too spent some time up there having a look at it. It's my old neighborhood, and it looks fairly innocuous, and I think that staff need to have a good look at it.
Okay. Any further comments? Motion is pretty simple, that we refer this to staff for review and a report to come back to committee, and we will then be able to know what we are talking about. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. That brings us to the next one. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that Jean Montgomery be reappointed to the Board of Directors of the Haldimand Norfolk Housing Corporation. I will make that motion. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Moved by Councillor Columbus. Motion is on the floor.
Wait a minute. There's more to it.
Yes.
And that Bernie Corbett of Haldimand County be appointed to the same board.
All right. So we're basically appointing the two, Jean Montgomery and Bernie Corbett. Are you all right seconding that? Any further discussion? Councillor Columbus, please.
Just as a council representative on the Haldimand Norfolk Housing Corporation Board of Directors, just to say that we really appreciate Jean Montgomery's contribution. She's been there for the last 3 years. And Bernie Corbett, he's a Haldimand councillor. It's unusual to have a councillor from Haldeman sit on this, but they've had problems filling the spot since there was a death on that board. And we welcome Mr. Bernie Corbett to the board. Thank you.
Motion is on the table. All in favor? Motion is carried. Brings us to item C, resolution. What do you wish to do with it? Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the recommendation that Norfolk County Council endorse the resolution of the municipality of Bluewater. Basically what this is a resolution that asks that the Ontario Energy Board overrule a ruling that they put forward that would hide the carbon fee in your delivery line of your natural gas bill. Yeah, I think we all feel the same about hidden fees around this council, and obviously it's not something, it's not open and transparent, let me put it that way.
Okay.
I think to be open and transparent, it needs to be on that bill.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder to get it on the floor? Councillor Sonnenberg. Now we have it on the floor. You know what the resolution is. Councillor Sonnenberg, do you wish to speak? Anyone else? All right. You know what the motion is. All in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to item number D. Mayor Luke.
Very much, Chairman Wells. I'm going to move the recommendation. It's in the report. If there's a seconder, I'd like to speak to it.
And just so the listening audience knows, this is dealing with the sidewalk and Evergreen Hill Road. That's what we're talking about, by the school. And now, a seconder by Councillor Black. All right, Mayor Luke, please.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just quickly want to say that I would like staff to come back with some various options of what can and can't be done. Certainly, I think everyone around this table is aware of where this is and the situation. And the difficult part here is that a sidewalk on the north side of Evergreen from Norfolk, probably 85 to 90% of the way, isn't a problem. It's why when you get past Jensen Cheese, the driveways start to become very sloped. And there's maybe 5, I can't remember, I walked it and counted, I think it was 5 or 6. So there has to be something that we can do to help tackle this problem, and I think I'll wait for the staff report to discuss it further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Black, do you wish to add anything to that? Anybody else? Questions? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had sent an email around with the suggestion that the sidewalk go on the south side of Evergreen Hill Road down to home number 42 Evergreen Hill Road, and then have a crosswalk to the north, and then have that sidewalk in front of Jensen Cheese head east towards Norfolk Street. And I just wonder what Ms. Robinson has to say about that. That eliminates some of the geographic issues.
Through the chairman to council, there's been a variety of suggestions and solutions and other things put forward to staff, and should council provide the direction, staff will consider all of those and bring them all back in a detailed report, looking at all the variety of different suggestions that have been put forward, both by members of council and members of the public.
So you have noted my suggestion, and I think Councillor Oliver put one out today.
Absolutely. There's been several, and we'll review all of them and include those in the staff report.
Thank you.
Further comments? Seeing none, the motion is on the floor. All in favor? Motion is carried. It is now in the hands of staff for a report. Bringing us to the next one. Dealing with the Port Dover Harbor Authority, again asking it to be referred to staff. Councillor Columbus.
Yes, I will move that this be referred to staff for a report.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we able to ask some questions on this one?
You're not moving it? You're not seconding it?
No.
Could I wait until I get a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Oliver. All right. It is on the floor. You can ask all the questions you want now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we able to get some details on this from Public Works, maybe? This, I don't know, the ice making machine and how there's no sewage being paid. Do they not have washrooms in there?
No.
Like,
Through the chairman to council, they are currently paying sewer charges, or they're supposed to be paying sewer charges. And this request involves them not wanting to be paying the sewer charges because the majority, as council's aware, the water, the way our wastewater rates are is you pay your sewer charges based on the volume of water that you use. Because their product is ice, the end result is that most of the water that they consume does not go into the municipal sewage system. So yes, they would have to have washrooms in that facility, but we've had many discussions with them and we can articulate all of that in a report when it comes back to council.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, would they not be similar to our other large water customers where there's been a deal cut with them where they pay X amount? Like, there are a couple users in Simcoe that are massive water users, and I doubt that it corresponds to the sewage when it's never leaving that place either.
Through the chairman to council, I can speak to, there's several different locations within Norfolk County where we have put things in place, and I'd like to say that there isn't a deal in place. What has been placed in effect is that they have certain things put in place to actually monitor their wastewater consumption, and so they only pay for the wastewater that they actually generate. So it's not a deal. They actually pay for the wastewater that they do generate via a variety of different mechanisms that we use for monitoring how much is being produced and measured. So there's different meters and stuff that are put in place. We've certainly put forward the offer to these people on a few times to have that infrastructure put in place for them as well.
Is it cost prohibitive?
Through the chairman to council, I think that all these various discussions would be better supported in a report where we can outline all of that information with the appropriate background for you.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I don't believe they have washrooms, by the way. Anyone else? All right. We have a motion that it be referred to staff. All in favor? It has now been turned over to you, Ms. Robinson. We will await your staff report. That brings us to the next one, an unsafe ditch. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to move the motion that's there, but I would like to ask a question about the motion if I could.
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I know these folks have spoken with staff, and it's my understanding that they've been advised by staff that they, meaning the property owners, would be allowed to enclose the ditch at their expense. And obviously I'd see no value if it goes to staff and that's all that comes out of it. So I guess my question through you, Mr. Chair, to either the clerk or to Ms. Robinson or both, if we pass this motion, does whatever the staff response is come back to council for review, or would something simply go to the landowner that may be exactly what they've been told verbally in the past, in which case it hasn't solved their problem, and I would be putting forward a different motion depending on what's going to happen.
Ms. Robinson, please.
Through the chairman to council, and I'll have the clerk correct me if I'm mistaken. The way it's worded is the appropriate response. In this particular case, I would say that staff and the property owner are at a stalemate, and staff would deem the appropriate response to this one to be a report back to council. So although it's worded this way, I would be bringing forward a report back to council because we really, at this point, staff have exhausted our ability to implement anything other than what we've been directed to do so by council, and council would need to provide us further direction. So to me, that would be the appropriate response, which would be to bring a report back. I don't think I need a different motion to bring that report back.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Ms. Robbins for that answer. And I will certainly go ahead and move this motion on that understanding that it would come back to council and we could make the ultimate decision as to whether we allow the landowner to do it or whether, as is my opinion, the municipality should undertake that. But I'll wait and see what comes in the report. Thank you. So that's my motion too.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded that this be turned over to staff for report, and obviously we'll come back. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, we have one other. No, we got two. No, we got one. How about the next one from Ms. King? Councillor Black.
Again, just maybe to put council in the picture here, I know yourself and Mayor Luke and myself sit on the library board, and the dilemma that the library board faces is that this libraries are owned by the county, and yet we have a major problem with the water going into the basement of the Port Rowan Library, and we're kind of stuck at fixing it. So my view is that the county should implement the process of fixing it, but is that what this recommendation would ultimately lead us to? Because it really is kind of, I'd say it's a bit of an emergency because there's water in the basement of that library.
The county manager wishes to answer your question.
I've had the opportunity to meet with not just myself, the treasurer and I, and representatives from facilities have had the opportunity to meet with the library CEO, Ms. King, and I've had a couple of discussions on this topic. If you approve this referral to staff, what you will get in response is a staff report that will attempt to look at a couple of variables or give you some options. It is basically fair to say that the library board has no money. It gets about $10,000 a year for what they call capital repairs. I don't think we would consider them capital repairs here. I think we just call it maintenance. But at any rate, whatever adjective you wish to use, they don't have the funds necessary to make substantive improvements or repairs to their infrastructure. We are, in fact, the landlord. So I don't want to prejudge the report, but we try to provide you with some options, possibly looking at a reserve here, or possibly looking at changing future funding to the library board, provide it more money, but have it save up for its own rainy day. There are different options you can go through, and of course, beyond that, there's the actual decision as to whether or not you wish to finance repairs to the facility in Port Rowan. So the report would deal with a couple of issues, provide a couple of options for council's consideration in due course.
There's no timeline on this, but I'm hoping it doesn't get kind of stuck in, bureaucracy, because there is, I think, some necessity to move on this and repair it, because it is continuing to leak and cause problems and maintenance concerns, and it's costing the library money to hire somebody to continually come in there and mop up, clean up. So wondered if there could be a timeline.
Well, in fairness, the library board waited 2.5 months to bring this to our attention, so the degree of urgency is questionable. That being said, the repair, the infrastructure problem is real. We'd probably ask, because we still have ongoing issues with the gas leak, a solid month to bring the report back. But if you wish it sooner, we will prioritize it accordingly.
We'll see what my fellow colleagues have to say about it.
Okay. You're on, Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess
maybe we should have a motion on the floor first before we debate it, should we? Did you move that, Councillor Black?
No.
It
was no debate. It was a question, I guess.
Okay. Go ahead then, Councillor Brunton. Sorry about that.
Has anybody looked at it? I'm just kind of curious, is this a problem around the building, or is there a high water table there? What's the problem with it? Has anybody looked at it?
Mayor Luke?
Well, there was a contractor or two that came in to get a quote and look the situation over. And I think it's best to deal with this when we get a report back, if we go that way, a response. But as you're aware, the building to the north of the library in Port Rowan is very, very close. And it will not be, if it has to be dug up, there would probably be some shoring that would have to take place. The material that's dug out would have to be removed from the site because of how tight everything is. So the quotes were quite high. But that's the best I can tell you is...
So it sounds like it's not a groundwater problem, it's a surface problem that's caused.
Well, we don't know. We have heard that could be a crack in the basement wall. It could be something under the floor going into the sump pump. Could be. They've looked at a lot of different things, not being able to really figure out without digging it up what's going on. They can't really see where water is coming through the crack. It could be coming partway through, going down. Don't know. Thank you.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, my question, would this be something that Lee would be looking into? Lee?
Through the chairman to council, I have spoken with staff, and there is a variety of exploratory work, et cetera, that needs to be taken place to actually figure out what's going on. I would respectfully suggest that the second council and committee in October would be the appropriate time to have a report back so that we can actually provide council with some information in which you guys can make an informed decision, as opposed to I think in a brief period of time we're going to be into a lot of guesswork, and I'd prefer to have a little bit more information at the time for council to decide.
That's fine. The other question, just while we're on the library down there, I noticed on Sunday when we were in the parade, is there a roof scheduled for that place? Anybody answer that question?
Through the chairman to council, we do have roofs scheduled for everywhere in the municipality. I don't off the top of my head know what year that roof is scheduled for. I believe it's sometime in the next 2 years, but I will double check and get back to council.
Yeah, I just noticed that on Sunday that it was in very bad shape. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a mover of that?
I do not.
I'll move that be referred to staff for an appropriate report.
Could I have a seconder? Councillor Height, thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Black.
I heard a date, so could we include that in the motion? That be brought back to, is it did you say the second?
I had indicated the second council and committee meeting in October, so that'll be about the third week of October.
Would the mover and seconder include that?
It has been included. All in favor? Motion is carried. Now, that brings us, if my math is correct, back to reports and committees. The rest we have done, Mr. Clerk, have we not? So the first report of committees is the Norfolk Environmental Advisory Committee minutes, found on page 31. Councillor Oliver.
I'll move their adoption as presented, or whatever we usually do.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Do we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Geisens. We have a motion on the floor that we receive these minutes by Councillor Oliver, Councillor Geisens. Any questions? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Let us go to the next one. Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board minutes. What sayest thou? Councillor Columbus.
I'll move the minutes of the July 24th Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board.
And Mayor Luke, you are seconding that motion. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Bringing us to the next one, Health and Social Services Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Sonnenberg.
I will move they be accepted as printed.
I need a seconder, folks. Seconded by Councillor Brunton. Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Staff reports. First staff report is reserve funds bylaw, and it was deferred, and I presume that's you, Mr. Johnson. You lead us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to the mayor and members of council, staff report FS 17-33 prepared by Kathy LaPlante is a follow-up report from the July 11th council meeting when we presented the comprehensive reserve report. In that report, there were many recommendations to improve the reserve process and communicating reserves and reserve funds going forward. One of the recommendations was the update the 2008 bylaw, which is presented to you tonight, in which there is nothing new from the discussions from the July meeting. Staff recommends approving the bylaw 2017-87. Next steps in Finance's reserve project is to provide council with a funding policy for the use of the reserves, a reserve policy, and also a development charges study. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
What sayest thou? Is somebody willing to move so we can get it on the floor at least? Councillor Black.
I would move the recommendation contained within the report.
And Councillor Oliver, I saw your hand. You're willing to second. So the motion is on the floor that we receive this. It's by Councillor Black, Councillor Oliver. Now we're open for discussion or questions. Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. That was simple. Okay, let's go to the staff report on hydraulic. Oh, yeah, some cutters. Yes. Would that be you, Mr. Cridlin? Are you leading us on this?
Through Mr. Chair, yes. The next three reports are from the Fire Division, and I'd like to introduce to my right here, I guess, Mr. Gord Stillwell, who is the Deputy Fire Chief, and Gord Stillwell has worked on all three of these reports, so he will get a little camera time here and present them to Council, and I'll be here for any questions that Gord may not be able to answer, as well as Fire Chief Terry Dix.
Mr. Stillwell, you're on.
Thank you. Through the chair to council, we're here tonight to bring this staff report for the standardization of our extrication equipment. We're asking council to exempt staff from the quotation tendering process for goods and services outlined by our purchasing policy to permit single source standardization of our hydraulics rescue tools during the procurement process for 2017 and 18. And also part of that to obtain council's approval for the standardization of the Hearst rescue tools and approve Code 4 safety, fire and safety as our single source supplier. A part of the reasoning why we're going with this request is we have over 50 pieces of Hearst extrication equipment in the stations across 11 stations. So staying standardized with that, it eliminates a lot of the training aspect of getting, guys working with different tools at different scenes when we're on an augmented response. And just a quick background on Hearst, they've been committed to research and development along for the quality and manufacturing of their equipment, and they've developed a line known for their outstanding safety and durability. There is indeed other brands of rescue tools. However, in order to keep everything standardized, our option or our request would be able to standardize with the Hearst equipment. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councillor Black.
So this is a piece of equipment. Could it be bought by from different retailers or suppliers? Same equipment, but by purchasing it from a different operation?
Through the chair to council, Code 4 is the exclusive dealer for Hearst in this area, so they set up divisions of North America to do it, so Code 4 is the Canadian distributor.
That's your Councillor Columbus, Oliver, and Mayor Luke.
Yes, Deputy Chief, what do we do with the old units that we've had in operation for 10 years or so?
Through the chair, some of them will be decommissioned just because they're not able to be fixed because they're at that certain age. And the other opportunity will be able to, as we're doing the transition, to move them into other departments or into other stations until we can complete all the phases of replacement. And we'll always ask the option of trade-in value, stuff like that from the dealer.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question kind of is a follow-up from Councillor Black's, and I may not even direct it to the Deputy Chief, but rather to Corporate Services. I'm looking at page 50 of our agenda, which I guess is page 2 of the report, near the bottom, and this is a comment from Corporate Support. Corporate Support Services supports the standardization and would recommend that Fire and Rescue and Purchasing conduct further marketplace analysis in 2018. When I read that, that says to me that there is more than one supplier of this particular standardized piece of equipment, but is that not the case? I just heard you say to Councillor Black that this one company is the sole Canadian distributor of that particular brand of equipment. So which is it? I mean, they're the only one, in which case what possible further market analysis could we do? Or if there are other suppliers, why aren't we trying to get them this year?
Through the chair to councillor. From what I've been told, and we've researched it with Code 4, Code 4 is the only supplier in Canada for these the Hearst type tools. I believe, from what I understand, to do further market would be with the different suppliers of different types of tools, not the Hearst equipment.